Okay everyone, this is just going to be a very short tutorial on how to run SQLite in Linux. I shouldn't really say Linux, I'm obviously running Ubuntu here. I've tested it out in Fedora, it works perfectly fine in Fedora, and I haven't tested it out in Mint, but look, you know, the general rule is that if it works in Ubuntu, there's a 99.99% chance that it'll work in Mint by following the exact same instructions. So anyway, all I've done is gone to the SQLite website. I've downloaded the SQLite precompiled binaries for Linux, so I'll just quickly show you where they are, just in case anyone's wondering. So if we type SQLite, should be the first thing that comes up. If we go to the SQLite page, you just have to forgive me, the internet here isn't the best, unfortunately. Okay, so you can download the source code and compile it yourself. I understand that, you know, a lot of Linux users like to play around with a few of the functions, and if they can play around with the source code, they do like to do it. I'm not even going to bother with that, but you're more than welcome to do it. This is just the one that I've downloaded here, so you'll see there. So I've just downloaded the precompiled binaries for Linux, and this is something which I went through a few forums, was compiled in a Ubuntu framework. So that's not why I'm running Ubuntu, but I know it will work in Ubuntu. Okay, I've created a directory IMB122. You don't have to do that. I'm doing that just because I like to keep everything self-contained. And SQLite, as when you execute it in the terminal and it's running in the terminal, a lot of its things, like even though you can pass all of its arguments with a full directory, it's a lot easier if you can just like pass it everything in the default directory, which is whatever you're working within. So what I mean by that is if you want to call a file or you want to call a database, it's a lot easier if it's all in the parent directory. So then you can just call it by name as opposed to calling it by directory. Anyway, so we're going to open this in terminal, obviously. Okay, so I'm going to change the directory to this folder here. So this is just on the desktop. So for me, I think I did it before. So you know, you Linux guys, you know what you're doing. Okay, so I've changed the directory to here, just to check that everything's in there. Okay, so to start running the function, once again, this, I believe, if I should have actually paid attention before, but I think it's written in C. So with any C application, and same with Java and C++ and many other languages, when you're actually calling the actual function, you can give it a parameter as well. Here we're going to pass it the Dream Home database parameter. So I downloaded this from the Blackboard. So download that. So let's just check that everything's there. Okay, so everything's working well here. So this is just the standard introductory text that's always given. The .tables command is just something, obviously, which brings up a listing of all the tables that are contained within it. So I'm just going to write a really basic SQL statement in order to see everything that's contained within the branch table. So I'm going to select the wildcard is the star symbol from branch, so that means select all columns from branch. Everything, remember SQL statements, as it says here, has to be terminated with a semicolon. Okay, and it comes up with the results. So that's working fine. Now SQLite, the way that it's been built is it's meant to be as lightweight as possible. So as you can see, the output is very ugly. We see that obviously the columns don't have a fixed length. The columns actually don't even have headers whatsoever. But that's just how it does it by default. It does it to be as compressed and as minimal system resourcing as possible, and I'm sure there's a far better way of saying that. Anyway, so if we want to turn the column headers on, we just type .headers on, and if we want to change the output mode so that it's column mode, so that everything's lined up in terms of columns, we just type .mode column lowercase. And if we've done that, and if I've done that correctly, which I'm 99% sure I have, when I run the previous command, and in case you're wondering, with me like scrolling in between, you guys are Linux users, so you'll be used to the fact that in the terminal, if you just hit up, you can go to previous commands. When you're actually within the SQL environment, so, and when I mean environment, when you've actually executed the files, you can actually do that as well. So this is the code that I want to run. And we see here that it's obviously a lot nicer and a lot prettier. So we've got actual column headers and everything has been lined up in its columns. It's still truncated, but it's nicer. Okay, So now what I'm going to do is show you one extra thing. This is one thing that it's purely optional to you, but this SQL statement obviously here is very short, very nice, very easy. As the semester progresses, these SQL statements are going to become long and ugly, and so it's much easier if you actually develop an executable SQL file. Well, no, sorry, not an executable SQL file. If you develop your SQL in a separate SQL file and then just run it from SQLite. Now, there are many different programming editing packages or IDEs, I should say, in Ubuntu. So I'm just going to go with one that actual Notepad++, which is the Windows equivalent, was actually based on, and the one that I'm going to be using is Scite, S-C-I-T-E. You can download the binaries directly from the website if you Google it, or if you're lazy like me, I use Ubuntu. If you go through the Software Center, it can install it directly. So for Fedora users, just go to the package manager and you can download it there as well. Okay, so once we've done that, let's open it up. Okay, so it's a very typical of anything in Linux. It's sort of very plain looking, but it's actually very powerful, and it's a great editor to use. First thing we need to do is we need to change the language. We're obviously going to be dealing with SQL. So now let's type out that SQL statement that we had before, which is just select all from branch. So select all from branch, and you'll see obviously the difference between doing it in this environment as opposed to, let me just bring this across, as opposed to typing it directly in here, is that the keywords or the actual words that are specific to the language are actually highlighted in blue, which is standard SQL. So let's save this. I'm going to save it into the exact same directory as what I had before, and I'm going to call it Q1 and you have to give it an extension type, so .sql is what the extension that we're going to give it. So q1.sql. Okay, so now to run it, you just type the .read and then you pass it in the file. Now once again, obviously because this is saved within the directory that we're working within, we don't have to give it a full path, so I can just give it the actual name. So .read q1.sql. If I've done everything right, it should produce exactly what we've got up here. And it does. So that's it. So that's all there is to it in terms of how to get it going in this case Ubuntu. But look, pretty much like I said, I've done it in Fedora. Everything's exactly the same, and Mint should be exactly the same. And if anyone's using any other versions of Ubuntu out there, I haven't tested it out, but I'm sure you'll figure it out. It's very easy to do. Okay,